Hey guys, and welcome to my vlog. My name is Erin and I'm a writer. I'm working on several fantasy pieces right now, and so I started this world building vlog series to kind of go through some of the things that I've had to think about while creating my fantasy worlds. So today's topic is magic and combat. Combat magic is pretty expansive and basically applies to any way that magic is being used for offense or defense. So at this point, from the magical basics, you should already have figured out where your magic is coming from, what levels we're at, and what the limits are. Probably the most common use of combat magic that you'll see is the use of magical weapons. Some notable examples are Arthur's Excalibur, Thor's Mjolnir, and the Sword of Gryffindor. These are weapons of war that either have a magical origin or they have been imbued with some type of magical power. If you are using magical weapons, you need to decide several things. Does the weapon augment the owner's power? Or does it have its own unique abilities that are completely separate from the user? Is the weapon able to be used by anyone, or is it only applicable to a specific person? And if it's only able to be used by one person, how is it distinguished when someone who is not that person tries to use it? Some magical weapons have some level of sentience, and if that applies to ones that you're using, then you need to figure out how the weapon is interacting with its users. You also need to know, can the magic from your weapon be depleted or drained, and if so, how can it be replenished? Another thing to consider with magical weapons is it always going to be in its battle-ready state, or does it have a more convenient form? A good example of this is in the Percy Jackson books. The sword that he uses has a travel form of a pen, which is much easier to cart around, especially if you're doing some type of urban fantasy. Protective magic also features pretty heavily when it comes to combat magic. This is where you'll run into things like magical armor, protective amulets and talismans, and magic shields. You want to consider the exact same questions we asked with the magical weapons on your magical protective items. You're not going to want a protective magical item to be so overpowered that it takes away the stakes, because no one's going to be worried about your character if they have this thing and nothing can hurt them. So combative spells are pretty well known thanks to media like Harry Potter. The wand itself is not a magical weapon because its base purpose is not for combat. Spells and charms can be used combatively, but they are not at their core for battle. Once you've done the legwork to figure out your basic magical system, you're going to know whether spells are a viable option in battle. If you're just doing the point and zap method like Harry Potter, then you're fine taking it onto the battlefield. But if you have to cart out supplies and do invocations to do your spells, then that's not really going to be very useful to you in a quick combat setting. I'm going to use elemental magic for these examples because it's really straightforward and easy to follow. So one of the best examples of combative elemental magic that I can think of is from the Avatar: The Last Airbender universe. And it sets it up really well because the characters are limited to a specific magical type, and each element has its own specific fighting style that accompanies it. You want to figure out how many branches of magic are available. You can start with the basics, the earth, air, fire, water, but you can also expand these a lot. Kind of like the Avatar universe did when they started to include lava, sand, metal, flight, lightning, ice, and blood. You can expand further to introduce other varieties, such as light and dark, technology, telekinesis, teleportation, energy, gravity, time, etc. Basically anything that you can think of, you can form into a type of combat magic. Figure out what options are available to your characters, and if they are able to wield more than one type. You also want to know which types of magic have bigger energy draws, and which ones are going to be most suitable for your characters to use to fight. And a final thought on that is immunity to magic. Can your characters be injured by the type of magic that they wield? If their spell or their element is reflected back on them, will they receive damage? So I hope that gives you guys a good rundown of the basics of combat magic. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions, please send me a note. I'll put all my social media links in the description below, and I will see you guys next week. Bye!